In this session, we're going to talk about co-parenting counseling. What is co-parenting counseling? Before we address that, we're going to talk about the concept of joint legal custody. Many jurisdictions have a strong public policy supporting joint legal custody following divorce. What that means is regardless of what the parenting time arrangements may be, in terms of residential or physical custody, in terms of legal custody, both parties would have the right to participate in the major medical, educational, social, and other significant decisions in a minor child's life. Now, the irony of this is that your jurisdiction may have what's called no-fault divorce on the grounds of irreconcilable differences or something similar to that. Irreconcilable differences means the parties are getting divorced. Why? Because they have differences that are irreconcilable. They can't agree on things. They don't see eye to eye. So when you think about it, it's somewhat inconsistent when two people who can't agree on things to the point where they have to get divorced to then be expected after they get divorced to serve as joint legal custodians and agree upon parenting decisions without some level of support. How does that happen? How do two people who are at such odds that they have to get divorced then automatically somehow work together on child-related issues? There would need to be some type of assistance, one would think, in a lot of these cases. So this is where co-parenting counseling comes in. If you just leave parties who are at complete odds on their own, there are likely to be ongoing fights, ongoing arguments, ongoing disagreements, and perhaps ongoing litigation, which can be very expensive, very time-consuming, very emotionally taxing, and ultimately stressful for the child if the parents are constantly arguing, like the parents in point C. So co-parenting counseling is essentially the opposite of marriage counseling. In marriage counseling, two parties are attempting to save their marriage. Or in relationship counseling, if they're not married but want to still stay together, they go to a counselor perhaps to try to work out their issues if it's possible. Co-parenting counseling assumes the parties are already either separated, divorced, or are divorcing, and they're beyond repairing their relationship with each other in that respect. But they still have to work together potentially as joint parents and possibly joint legal custodians on child-related issues, not only right after the divorce, but up until the child reaches the age of 18 or thereafter in some cases. So co-parenting counseling is something, if you have an attorney, you want to discuss with your attorney to see if this might fit within your case. Something you may want to bring up, something you may want to broach with the other side, because it may help the parties reach an amicable agreement, which can save money and time and move everybody to a more peaceful phase of their lives. Now, if there's, for example, a domestic violence restraining order in place between the parties, you may not be able to have co-parenting counseling because the restraining order may prohibit the parties from meeting together or in some cases even speaking with each other. But if we're talking about cases where there's not a restraining order in place and you don't have that level of danger or violence, so to speak, co-parenting counseling is something which it may be worthwhile to at least discuss with your attorney about the possibility of reaching out to the other side and seeing if there is a mutual interest. So what is co-parenting counseling? Co-parenting counseling, what it's not, is it's not an evaluation. It's not a psychological evaluation where an evaluator comes into court and testifies, so to speak, and says, which party they think is more fit to be a custodial parent, etc. That comes up in other types of cases. But if you're talking about co-parenting counseling just to bridge the gap between the parties and to get them co-functioning, it's essentially where the parties sit confidentially with a trained professional, either a psychologist or MSW or someone trained in the aspects of co-parenting counseling, to help the parties following their separation or divorce co-function and work together, even if they don't love each other anymore or don't like each other anymore, but still have an obligation to their child to work together. Just like when you go to work, you may not like everyone you work with at the workplace, but you have to work with them in some instances. And so with a child, it's important to be able to be, to some degree, on the same page with your ex, even if you don't necessarily agree with everything about what they do. Now, joint legal custody does not require that the parties agree on everything. but they have to be able to at least cooperate and co-function. So when they do have disagreements, they have a mechanism by which they can try to resolve those differences without going to court and calling each other names and having typewritten insults about each other, which just fan the flames and end up, in many cases, costing a lot of money and time and stress. So, for example, if you go to a co-parenting counselor, you can agree to go to 10 confidential sessions. It could be 10, it could be 5, it could be 15, whatever it may be. The counselor has the discretion generally to determine how those sessions are set up. They may meet with each party separately for the first couple of sessions and then bring the two together. They may or may not talk with the child, depending on the child's age. They may or may not talk with other third persons involved, such as other relatives or step parents or whatever it may be. But they have some professional discretion on how to discuss these issues. The co-parenting counselor generally does not testify in court against either party because it's confidential. And sometimes people say, well, this isn't going to work. You've never met anyone like my ex. And I can assure you, I was in the system long enough as a judge, before that as an attorney, and after I retired from the judiciary as a mediator, to say that probably I've met people like your ex. And I can tell you that there are very few cases that couldn't benefit from at least attempting the concept of of co-parenting counseling. Some people, they resist it because they just don't want to deal with their ex. They don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. They come up with a million reasons why they won't do it or they can't do it or it's the other side's fault. However, I can tell you from experience that many people are very surprised when they go through co-parenting counseling to find that it is actually, to some degree, helpful and healthy in melting the ice and trying to move everybody on to the next session with the assistance of a trained professional. And sometimes people say, I wish we would have done this earlier. We could have saved a lot of money and time and stress and aggravation in our very long divorce process had we done this up front. Sometimes people, they don't want to sit in the same room with their ex. That's fine, because in this Zoom era, which we have now, some co-parenting counselors will set up sessions on Zoom. So co-parenting counseling is not a cure-all. It doesn't magically make you best friends with your ex. It's something which is out there, which might be of some help to you in your particular case. And if you have an attorney, you may ask your attorney, is this something we should try? Is this something we should give at least an opportunity? And if it fails, it fails. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I just also want to indicate that co-parenting counseling tends to be voluntary, both sides agreeing, but courts can, in their discretion, order parties to go to co-parenting counseling, even over a party's objection. There's a case from New Jersey court called Madison versus Davis, a 2014 case, which discusses the reasons why a court can, in its discretion, order co-parenting counseling, because it's in the child's interest to have two co-functioning parents when possible. It's a duty owed to the child in some cases. I'm familiar with the case because I wrote the opinion on it. And if you Google Madison versus Davis and go to the end of that opinion, if you read it, you'll see what I'm talking about. So whether it's voluntary or compulsory, either way, co-parenting counseling is something in the toolkit that can be used to help potentially the parties. Can it help end your case? Maybe. And maybe you and your ex and your child or children can reach a mutual arrangement that leads to a peaceful point C.